surface of the rigger. I switched on the low-light scope on my rifle. In the mist, it's impossible to gather enough natural light through a regular scope to pinpoint a target, especially if that target happens to be a greenish color, not much different from everything else around you. Ducking under the stubby port wing, I swung the beam of a flashlight along its trailing edge. The acid hadn't struck that far forward. Damn lucky. I pointed the beam back toward the vapor jet where it had struck. A mass of brown, ragged holes was all that remained of the engine's fairing. Another 2 feet forward and it would have hit the jet dead on, and I'd have hit the soup 200 miles from home. I shook my head in amazement. What were they doing there? I don't know where the story originated. Old Earth, I suspect. But somewhere sprang up the myth that dragons breathe fire. They don't. Dragons spit acid that makes sulfuric look like honey. Gallons of the stuff. It's easy to see how those old-timers got it confused, but that was their problem. My problem was the dragon acid damage my rigger was carrying. Damage that shouted to the world, well, at least to the rat-pickers of Elstedar City, that I'd been in dragon country. But I hadn't. So what was a flop of dragons doing there anyway, beneath the mist? I shook my head. In the 15 years I'd been running the mist, I'd never come across dragons this close to Elstedar. The fairing was beyond repair. It would have to be replaced. I circled the stern. Acid had splattered back along the nozzles, but the heat generated when I had gunned the jets to swing out from under them had burned most of it off. Still, it had discolored the metal, and that would be enough for a sharp-eyed investigator. Someone like Stamoplasm. I would have to have the nozzles polished, too. I'd worked too long and too hard for my outfitter's license to have it taken away because a flop of dragons didn't have the good sense to stay on their side of the world where they belonged. A new fairing, nozzles polished, paint retouched. Only one man could handle a job like that, discreetly. And his garage wasn't far from the club. But that posed another problem. I completed the circuit and found no further damage. Yeah, I'm lucky. I climbed the ramp back into the rigger. Now all I have to do is get back into town without attracting any rat pickers. The door hissed shut, closing the green world out, and auto fans came on to suck it from the cabin. I shucked my coveralls and went forward. Beyond the windscreen, the mist, iridescent beneath an afternoon sun, glowed like a living emerald. I switched on a radio station that played mostly Old Earth music and settled back to wait out the clock. Chapter 2. Stimpy. The vapor jets shook themselves awake with a low, reluctant whine, sucking in green mist, burning it, and spewing it out in a pumpkin-orange counterclockwise vortex. I lifted off the tangled ground at 8:30. Late enough, considering winter still had its frigid teeth sunk deep into the island above, keeping folks by their thermal walls, not outside, where they might see a damaged rigger limping out of the warm mist. At 4,000 feet, ice spiderwebbed the windscreen and defrosters clicked on. Through the thinning mist, white strobe flashes marked the edge of the black rock rampway. When the icy ramp came beneath me, I lowered the wheels and shut down the vapor jets. The tires thumped, and I nosed free of the mist, into the clear frozen air. Ahead, a crisp white blanket covered the shadowed land. In the distance twinkled the lights of Elstedar City. The frozen road was deserted, and I made it into town without drawing attention to myself. So far, so good. At Montage, I swung onto a frontage road into the warehouse district, where a rigger would be less obvious among the bulky shapes of transporters huddled next to their dark hangars. Beyond them winked the lights of Diaphanon Peace Spaceport. The flashing red beacon of a transporter diving out of the sky momentarily pulled my eyes. More tourists in for a sporting week, and some impressive 3Ds to show friends and family back home, if they were lucky. Well, there were plenty of runners in Elstedar City. They were welcome to the tourists, and their money. All I wanted was to go home, have a drink, then go to sleep. Suddenly a spotlight flared against a viewport, wrenching my attention from the landing transporter. Behind me, a patrol car careened around the corner,